Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to what is quickly spiraling into a bear attack area in need of intervention. Western Montana has been featured on this channel time and time again, so this time is no surprise. Near the town of Big Sky is a trail system known as the Yellow Mule Trails. The mountains around the town tower to over 10,000 feet, with Gallatin Peak being the tallest. The steep granite mountains are crowded with expansive stands of pine, fir, and spruce trees and contain pockets of aspen interspersed here and there. Along nearly every body of water, you may find bulrush and willow cushioned by lush grasses between. It is a sportsman's paradise here, but recently it became a sportsman's nightmare. At about 1:45 p.m. on September 8, 2023, 61-year-old Rudy Noorlander was up doing what he loved, hunting and being in the outdoors. Rudy is the owner of Alpine Adventures, an ATV rental company in Big Sky. He is a U.S. Navy veteran. Anyone who knew Rudy understood he was always prepared. He was a fan of the hit TV show Survivor and even tried to audition. On this day, he had his bear spray and his high-powered hunting rifle along with him. Rudy loved going to the Yellow Mule's Loop Trail, which is a circuitous route winding through prime deer habitat, but it also leads through prime grizzly territory. Rudy had a client rent some ATVs for their deer hunt, and Rudy had tagged along to hang out. The father and son had walked off a short distance, spotted a deer, and eventually worked their way within shooting distance. After firing a shot at what they thought was a lethal spot on the deer's anatomy, they went down to the location where the deer was standing when they shot. Now, conventional wisdom says that when you track a wounded game animal, you mark your position from where you shot, then proceed to the location where the game animal was wounded. From there, you look for telltale information provided in the surroundings. When a deer is struck with a bullet or an arrow, blood isn't necessarily visible right away, but you can usually see a disturbed pattern in the game animal tracks. The tracks may veer sideways or it may stumble. That may be the location where the game animal was struck by the projectile. After locating the tracks of the wounded animal, blood or tissue evidence should start appearing along the tracks if you hit the game animal in a vital area. Sure enough, the father and son found a decent blood trail indicating their shot was true. It seemed to peter out after following the blood trail for some time. They lost the track and decided to go back up to the ATVs and tell Rudy about what had happened. As soon as they reached the ATV, they told Rudy about how the blood trail had just disappeared and asked him for advice. Rudy wasn't the kind of guy to let a wounded game animal go without doing his best to locate the carcass. Together, the three of them headed back down the trail in search of the blood trail. Rudy knew this area like the back of his hand. He took a familiar trail that led him to the area the other men described and found a blood trail. It turned out that it was a different deer than the one wounded by the hunters, and there were already some very dangerous hunters following this one. In the fall, bears of all sorts are in hyperphagia, which simply means they eat as much food wherever they can find it. They are trying to pack on fat for hibernation and can roam hundreds of miles over a week's time in search of it. They will do desperate things if they have not gained the requisite fat, and have been known to be most active and aggressive during this time of year. A few hundred yards away, Rudy saw an adult grizzly. He decided he would pull his rifle out, just in case he needed to defend his and his fellow hunters' lives. Rudy holed himself up behind a tree and could see a juvenile grizzly a little way away from him. By the time he redirected his attention back to the large grizzly bear, his entire situation had turned extremely dangerous. The giant grizzly, described as being a 10-foot mega grizzly, had closed in on Rudy. He was by himself, having separated from the father and son who were looking elsewhere for the wounded deer. The giant grizzly had suddenly reappeared danger close to Rudy. It isn't clear what brought the bear within such close proximity to the man so quickly. Perhaps his scent had drifted to it on a fickle breeze, but whatever the case, it was now closing in on him with its eyes fixed directly on him. Rudy raised his rifle to his shoulder and yelled, trying to get the bear to stop its charge. As it closed in on him, he knew he had only one option, and he took aim and squeezed the trigger of his hunting rifle. Expecting a loud report and a sturdy kick as the rifle discharged, Rudy was terrified when he only heard the click of the firing pin striking the primer. His hunting rifle had misfired, and at the most crucial time of his life. In the adrenaline-filled moments of a bear attack, victims' brains reportedly process thoughts and information very quickly. Rudy's first thought was to fall down and play dead, but he knew he wouldn't even be able to dive to the ground before the bear would be on him. In a last-ditch attempt at driving the bear off, Rudy swung his fist with all his might and struck the bear in the nose. Rudy's punch bounced off of the grizzly's nose as if it didn't connect. The bear reached out its jaws and clamped them onto Rudy's face like some kind of predatory kiss of death. The single bite from the grizzly's jaws shattered Rudy's lower jaw, and with one shake of its head, his entire lower jaw was torn from his face. Along with Rudy's jaw came a portion of his trachea, which is the cartilage tube we use to breathe. The enraged grizzly began clawing at Rudy's chest cavity, slicing through bones, skin, and flesh with very little resistance. With Rudy's chest torn wide open, the grizzly moved its attack down to his right leg. It bit his leg several times, opening up huge puncture wounds from which his blood poured onto the ground around him. During the attack, Rudy's body was being tossed around like a pillow at a teenager's slumber party. The grizzly then clamped its jaws onto his left bicep and drove its 2-inch-long canines clean through his skin and muscle, opening up several more huge puncture wounds. Now, in prior episodes, we have discussed what really happens when any bear bites a human being. They don't simply clamp down until their teeth come together. They drive their canines through the flesh and use their body mass and strength to pull the flesh away. This nearly always creates a wound cavity beneath the skin that can fill with infection and at least bruise the tissue. If this were a horror movie, you would expect to see the victim lose consciousness, but Rudy stayed conscious through the entire attack. He wasn't a limp body being tossed around during the attack, but chose to fight for his life, yelling, kicking, and punching the grizzly the entire time. A short way around the mountain, the father and son had heard Rudy's screams and the bear's roars. They arrived at the attack scene while the bear was still mauling Rudy, but hesitated to fire their rifle as they didn't want to hit him. They did manage to shoot the bear one time before they grabbed rocks and began pelting the bear as they yelled, trying to run it off. For some reason, the rocks worked. The bear turned around and disappeared into the forest, for now. As they approached Rudy's side, they could see he was near death's door. They fortunately discovered they had cell service. They retrieved their cell phone and reached out to emergency responders for immediate medical attention for Rudy. While waiting for the paramedics to respond, the father and son continually asked Rudy if he was okay. He was missing so much of his face, all he could do was lift his hand and give them an affirmative thumbs up in response. Given the amount of pain and trauma Rudy had just experienced, it seems a medical miracle that he didn't pass out or at least go into shock. The hunters waited with him until they heard the unmistakable sound of the Gallatin County Life Flight helicopter entering the valley. Along with the Life Flight paramedics, the GCSS Air, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Law Enforcement, U.S. Forest Service Law Enforcement as well, and the Gallatin County Sheriff's deputies all responded to Rudy's attack scene. Rudy's route to medical help was met with some confusion. During the attack, he had sustained a complete removal of his lower jaw, partial removal of his trachea, a collapsed lung from the bear tearing open his chest, and numerous other gashes and puncture wounds from the grizzly's claws and teeth. They knew he needed urgent life-saving medical care, but his wounds had to have approached the support limitations of every hospital in the vicinity. At the Bozeman Health Deaconess Regional Medical Center, Rudy underwent surgery to stabilize his condition. Medical professionals there performed a tracheostomy, which is an incision into the trachea to allow air to enter the trachea from an unobstructed pathway. From there, Rudy was flown to the University of Utah Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he is currently recuperating in the intensive care unit at the time of this video creation. The most recent updates on Rudy's condition indicate that he is off the ventilator now and is doing better. He recently underwent the first of many reconstructive surgeries to repair at least part of the damage done to his face. He reportedly even walked around a bit at the hospital. His daughter indicated that plans to remove one of his fibulas from his lower leg to recreate his lower jaw eventually. For now, he will have a metal plate inserted to replace his jaw for the short term. From the time he was attacked to when he arrived at the hospital in Bozeman, Rudy had been horribly mangled but managed to stay alert and aware for 2 hours. In response to Rudy's attack, authorities have closed the area around Yellow Mule Trail system to any foot traffic and have initiated a search for the giant grizzly bear. A GoFundMe account has been opened up if you would like to help Rudy offset some of his medical bills, and it is linked to in a pinned comment below this video. A few of Rudy's photos have been posted on my Patreon linked below, so if you want to check them out, they are available. If this were the end of this episode, it would be plenty, but I have some more information on a follow-up regarding the episode about Amy Adams's fatal grizzly attack on July 22nd, just about 50 miles south of Rudy's. Just west of West Yellowstone, a sow and cub grizzly had been breaking into cabins and homes in search of food. She had entered through windows and devoured dog food and any other food items she could find. The sow had a single cub that would accompany her during her home invasions. The sow and cub were apprehended after complaints were filed by the residents in the area. DNA evidence was pulled from both grizzlies and compared to the DNA evidence pulled from the scene of Amy's attack. The samples were compared favorably. The same sow was also found to have attacked a man in Idaho 3 years ago near Henry's Lake. Both grizzlies were positively identified as the bears who killed Amy Adamson and were immediately euthanized. In the last month, at least 4 close encounters have been reported to authorities by outdoorsmen. All of the encounters in which the bears were killed were deemed self-defense and the victims were not cited for any violations. Dan Springer, Gallatin County Sheriff's deputy, encourages people who decide to venture into the forests to plan for contingencies. A cell phone that worked and received a signal was integral to saving Rudy's life in this episode, and many other instances of similar occurrences have also been documented. First aid and trauma kits are essential as well. The Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks issued a statement declaring that Montana is bear country. They state that grizzly populations are increasing in density and are becoming more widespread. The likelihood of people encountering grizzlies will increase in occurrence and frequency. Wow, what an episode. After reviewing the facts surrounding this attack, I am left with a few questions for you. What would you do if you found yourself between 2 different grizzly bears while tracking a wounded deer? Do you plan to put a cell phone into your backpack next time you venture into the forest? What other defensive tools do you recommend for a person to use to defend themselves in addition to bear spray and a high-powered rifle? What factors can you identify that led to Rudy's survival? I will be glad to read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.